Good day and welcome, America and beyond. Tom Donahue for Tom Donahue Reports, Patriotism in Action. So glad you can be with us on this very eve. And I say eve because it's the eve of the storm. Sandy is barreling up the coastline. And as many of you are fully aware, I live in kind of the eye of the storm, Philadelphia. Now, well, it's not the Jersey coast, but we're still going to get pounded. But that's not the reason I'm checking in with you, because you can get AccuWeather and you can get the Weather Channel for all those updates. What I am here for is your political lessons in education. And I try through this information exchange, and I try to make this an avenue or a venue or a portal for information that is not generally readily available. And also it is my take and sometimes my tirade. But I'm hoping that many of you have already accessed the interview. And I say the interview because it's a new feature, part of this program and our multi-dimensional media approach or multi-pronged media approach. Because I think it's very important that I bring you the information through not just commentary and through reporting and through recording, but also going back to my roots and interviewing people that really matter. And I think that what they have to say is impactful. And there are no time barriers or limitations or windows. And so the debut, my first interview, and I'm so appreciative because I didn't know whether he would accept. I didn't know whether he'd be available. But it was G Edward Griffin, the author that's most prominently known, and I would say that the cornerstone of his work and his notoriety is his work entitled Creature from Jekyll Island. And we're talking about the Federal Reserve. Well, let me just say a little bit of the backstory. And as you know, many of you have had to listen over the last few years where I said I was frustrated having to play tag and to try to track down and you get the confirmation for the interview, and sometimes it gets messed up because of time zones, and sometimes because people forget or things happen, things come up that prevent and preempt these interviews. Well, that happened for one given day. It was rescheduled for the following day, which was no big deal because I worked it into my schedule and his, and it wasn't a live program where there'd be a letdown or disappointment. So I have a record system which is very, very good, which I use for this particular program that you're going to be listening to, and you have for quite some time when I record these reports for podcast and for later on for the stream and for the 24/7 channel. But the thing is that if you want to do a two-way recording and they're not right here with you, well, I came up with the idea of, well, let's do it through Skype. Well, the problem at that time was that through my system, only one person, actually I shouldn't say one person because it can record Skype, but I have to do it through my external laptop mic and not through my headset and the noise-canceling Logitech headset and microphone. So I conducted the interview without, a USB headset and microphone. My guest was on a headset and came through Skype. And so you can hear sometimes a little overmodulation. Sometimes it sounds like maybe I'm in a little bit of a tunnel. But you know how when you talk to somebody through your laptop, if you're using Skype and other similar mechanisms, it's going to be decent, but not the highest fidelity. So that's what happened. So I learned some lessons from that, and now I have a system that's compatible with Skype that we both can use headsets, and that I can elevate my game in terms of or game and gain as to how well I will sound as the interviewer as well as the interviewee. So I think you'll see a marked improvement in the future interviews for the program Tom Donahue Reports, The Interview. I don't have the second guest lined up yet. I've got invites out, and I do get barraged from mainstream and even some of the alternative fringe people that want to be on. And you know, I have to say there might be some offbeat interviews I do. That's because I may just simply want to do them. But there's going to be others that I'm just going to say I'm just not feeling it. I'm just not into it. So bear with me, but we will have more of The Interview. And again, thank you for not being too critical in terms of sound quality. Because as you know, I may not be a perfectionist, but boy, I sure do strive for things to sound good and the things to be well produced, and I take great pride in that. But the other part that I left out, and I was getting to it, I wasn't going to leave it out, was that what a trooper G Edward Griffin was. Because my timer on the system that I'm using right now, it kept reverting back to 15 minutes. Well, I was planning to do an hour interview, and I was going to put a little extra time on there in case we ran a few minutes over. So every time we hit the 15-minute marker, it stopped. And I didn't have enough time to figure out why it was doing that, and so we just continued to record segments, and we tried to make the best transition. So they had to be cobbled together or patched together, and I want to give a really big shout-out to DJ at the Talk Superstation. I'm learning to do some of this editing, as long as it's not too complicated, but there's some finer touches that I just wasn't quite sure how to patch it together in a seamless fashion. Thanks again, DJ at the Talk Superstation. And by the way, they do stream our program, I think, on a weekly basis, and sometimes even more so for a program like The Interview. But we do use TalkStream Live for our late night streams, and of course, TD Media is the 24/7 channel. What's starting to pick up some is our YouTube channel. And I really think that after I get this particular interview posted, we should get some traction from that. And then as people start to find that we'll have special interviews and the reports, I think this will become a very popular feature. But nevertheless, we're just going to continue using all the means available to us media-wise, new media, old media, in-between media, whatever it takes to get the word out. But I have to do it in my own time, in my own way, and that's the way that goes. I didn't mention the third debate up to this point, but let me just cover it briefly. Obama won 2 out of the 3 debates. Now, again, I don't have an axe in this, or I don't have a dog in this hunt, meaning an axe to grind, because if I'm going to take an axe, to one, I'm going to take it to the other. Because I see one as the corporate socialist and the other as the red communist. And if you think there's a whole lot of difference between the two, well, then go have a party away and vote for the Romster. But I have to agree with the so-called president, the imposter-in-chief, Obama. And really it was Obama revived in the last 2 debates. And he kind of came alive. He was actually, fighting for his job. And I have to say, there is no question. I mean, he didn't score a knockout punch. And Romney definitely got I would say it was a knockout in the first debate. Obama scored TKOs, technical knockouts, I think. But it wasn't as close as the Republicans and Fox and the sycophants wanted you to believe. And I think when it came to foreign policy and foreign affairs, Obama had some strengths and he has some weaknesses. And Romney, all of a sudden, he's got this personality disorder. Not just Romnesia, which Obama's pretty clever, as writers were, to come up with that. Because I've always said political amnesia How many times have you guys heard me say that about the way people analyze politics or what they remember, who they supported and then how they evolved or devolved? Well, the problem here is that Romney keeps doing the Etch-a-Sketch. He's moderate one minute. He's trying to be Mr. Conservative, social conservative. He's all over the map. He can't explain his policies. Now, it's one thing to say Obama still can't explain why he's a failed president, especially when it comes to the economy and jobs and all that. And you could say, well, if you're judging gradualism, or that he's helped stop the bleeding to some extent, well, that's just wonderful. That's what we hired you for. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I didn't hire him, but some of you did. But let's look at this from as objective as we can be. And the fact of the matter is that Obama won 2 debates. Romney won very strongly the first debate. Well, generally, now, unless that debate cinched for many or seared it in their memory that this was the guy that they wanted to switch to, then you have to say that the momentum, no matter what the polls say, the momentum will have swung back to Obama. So you got a man that's suffering from amnesia, and again, that's not my term, although I've always used political amnesia. You've got a guy that's Etch-a-Sketch, and he's all over the place. He's got a personality disorder, multiple personality disorder. I don't know which guy they're talking to or interviewing or what he stands for or what he believes. Does he have any core values at all? I saw one of the endorsements, and it was a tepid endorsement of Obama, but they said at least we know where he stands. They I think it was, I don't know if it was the Des Moines Register, but it was one of those papers. It's not that important. Romney got his share of endorsements and papers that switched, after endorsing Obama in 2008. That's not the issue. The issue is that there are many people that want to back Romney, but they don't know what he stands for, and they're very distrustful. And so, if this man had a consistency and there was a core, and at least with Obama, he pretty much tells you he doesn't use the term that I'm a red commie, but if you just listen to him, almost all the credit will go to the government, and the government is more the protector, the grantor of our sacred rights, and that there's a heavy dependency culture is part of that formula, and he's an enabler, and there's codependency, but nevertheless, let's just look at this in a very realistic way. I predicted, a few years ago, that Romney would be the nominee, and that in all likelihood he would win the presidency. But I still think that Bill Clinton being the closer, and I still think the strength of the Democrat National Convention, and I think the fact that Romney he has hits and misses, and that the lasting impression was that Romney did not understand our foreign policy, and Romney came on with a different personality, and where he needed to challenge him, he didn't challenge him. Now, there were times in all 3 debates that I thought that Romney was at times much ruder, although Obama at times was an interrupter, and sometimes he was, he had his haughty and his condescending looks, but I still think that if you really studied the body language, Romney was very stiff. Romney, although confident and well prepared, he just came across as someone that would be your boss, and oh my gosh, this guy's going to fire me or sanction me, and you just think Bain Capital and Bain aggression. That's what I think. Obama reminds you of kind of the philosophical professor, and someone that he's a little bit uptight, but there were times where that all of a sudden he could let his proverbial hair down, and then he could relax, and then he could crack a few jokes, and of course you have to throw a few baskets. But in terms of likability, even though both of them have a sense of aloofness and arrogance, I still think that you have to check the box for Obama. And I don't like either of them. I wouldn't vote for either of them. I can see why some people that are small business folks and people that feel like maybe you get a better shot at the American dream, or maybe shore up the American dream because of business, finance, economics. I get that, all right, if that's what you want to do. There is let me bring this up here on the screen for a moment. What day was it I did? That was on the 18th. I want you to go back and listen. It's just a 20-minute report, and I even have a description of the report. It's up on YouTube as well, but over at Podomatic. It says, Romney campaign and GOP targets third parties. They fear an electoral threat in battleground states. GOP attempts to prevent and contest ballot access and eligibility of Gary Johnson in particular, meaning the Libertarian candidate for president. The GOP 2012 candidates have forsaken, and they've actually decided to forego, the Tea Party label and the faithful. They have distanced themselves at all costs from the Tea Party in order to get, it's all about elections, electability. And so I told you this would happen. I told you they would be, subsumed into the Republican Party, and there would not be any individual identity or agenda that would be long-lasting, and that's sad. But then again, there's precedent for that. Look at the Reform Party. What influence do they have now? None. Absolutely none. Now, I know there was third-party debates, and Larry King on the Internet, through I think it's Aura TV, it's the Mexican billionaire tycoon who owns that obscure network. And hey, I'm glad that at least they had an opportunity to debate, and the video is up on YouTube and various other locations, so that's great. And I even heard on MSNBC that are the lovers of Obama. I mean, really, they are. And you say that with Fox and Romney, so whatever. Okay, so whether it's left-leaning, right-swinging, whatever the case may be, but Lawrence O'Donnell, who he's a bright guy, but he's another arrogant, critical fool. But let me just say this: he actually said that generally he votes for alternative, independent candidates. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. And he said there's only one election that he actually went with one of the two major parties, which, of course, was pretty evident and completely obvious it was Obama. And he said that he never felt like he was throwing his vote away. He said, well, if you vote, let's just say Romney loses like McCain, or vice versa, and you voted for the candidate that lost, was that a wasted vote? Do you feel that because it was really looking like McCain was not going to win, and so if you went ahead and voted for McCain and Palin, did you waste your vote? No, of course not. And so finally, I said, this guy's making some sense. And I've always said, you vote your conscience. The candidate, if there is a candidate that is more closely aligned with your principles, your philosophy, your ideology, maybe even your spirituality, that's who you vote for. Period. And so now the thing he did say, the cautionary note was, or the asterisk next to that vote, is that if you're in a battleground state and it's a very close election, well, then he's suggesting that you may want to go beyond your conscience, and if you help elect by virtue of voting for the independent, like Nader, the Nader vote in Florida, you may help elect the guy that you're least akin to. So that was a good point, and I'll give him that. But again, I still think you just vote your conscience, period. You can't get into pragmatics. It's principle over pragmatics, and that's just where I'm coming from. Make sure you check out the website, TomDonahueReports.com. You can connect to our YouTube channel. Of course, we've got an individual player up also for the interview with G Edward Griffin on the Federal Reserve System, the creature from Jekyll Island.